Does everyone have it?
Yeah. Yep.
I put you on the thing.
Sure you have my right email?
It's your answer.
04.
Is your little picture. I know that's you. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Because you can read your phone. Okay, butterfly. Who are you, you little butterfly? You who fills a troublesome mind like a storm to a clear sky. I tried to catch you, little butterfly, but you flew far away. Why? Why did I try when you never intended to stay? I lay my head at night, sanity held upon a thread. Solemn thoughts do fill my head, so I think about a little butterfly instead. Ever in my mind, this pretty butterfly stays, always fluttering to and fro, setting my heart ablaze.
You good?
I wrote this poem to illustrate my thoughts, my alone personal thoughts when I'm by myself.
If anyone wants to comment on it, you can.
I think you do a good job of communicating the inner struggle that you're experiencing currently. Particularly like the towards the end, I lay my head at night, sanity held upon a thread. And so, I mean, obviously there that's probably a touch overstated, but it gives you that, again, that impression that you're really wrestling with something. And then solemn thoughts do fill my head, so I think about a little butterfly instead. So turning it back to that internal struggle between the solemn thoughts that you have apart from the butterfly and then returning back to the thought of that.
Yeah.
But I think it's really well done. I think you clearly communicate really simply kind of an internal monologue, internal struggle, and it shows, at least what I got from it reading it, was that you are wrestling, that there's a wrestling that's going on in your mind. So, very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Can move on.
Why is everyone being so quiet? Usually you guys comment on each other's poems pretty well.
No one asked anything.
What encouraged you to write it? What was your thoughts going in to write it? Did you have like a reason?
Yeah. I've written poems like this before when I write poems about like my thoughts and my inner self and my contemplation life. I wrote some other poems similar to it, so I just like writing poems about just what I'm thinking about and what goes on inside.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, sometimes when I can't go to sleep at night, I'll just write a poem. And I can usually write them fairly quickly, so it's just something I do before I go to bed sometimes. And I just kind of let me write a poem.
Did you find that it was helpful once you wrote it?
Yeah, because once I shared it with you, my dad, Brother Emmanuel, they really liked it, and my dad talked to me about it and helped me kind of like explain to me what, or I kind of explained to him why I wrote it, and he kind of helped like almost explain what I was explaining about it and broadened my view on thoughts and like just like thinking. I guess that's really good to write about these things because it helps to express what you're thinking about, and it does. So, but what? Thanks. But yeah, I mean, I encourage anyone to do something like this because, especially with a poem like this, poems always help me to release certain things. It can be for me at least, I usually release feelings or release anger or sadness. There can be really hard times in your life where you're having to struggle with things and you're having to let go of things. And sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. But maybe you can, and the least you can do is express that in a way that can not only help you release what's inside you, but it can show others who you are inside. And it just helps.
The other thing, since no one else is talking, I'll just keep talking. That I think is compelling is the first question you write, who are you? You little butterfly, and then you go to talk about the effects of the butterfly on you. And so it's almost like you're trying to figure out. It's like a question, like you're reflecting to the butterfly, like who are you? So it's asking that question of the butterfly, but there's also that, I think, juxtaposition of struggle then,
Right.
where you're saying, this is what you're doing to me, this is what is caused within me, this is the struggle that I'm experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be a question that you're, a device that you're using to ask the butterfly itself. It could be a rhetorical question where you're asking yourself what you think about the butterfly.
Right.
And then when you, as you explain it out, I mean, it's obvious that, again, it's that struggle, but there is such a, I think, a good juxtaposition between a butterfly and then the solemnness of what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
They're really polar opposites in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I said this every time, but a lot of the writings I've read of Elijah's, like you just pointed out, have very deep questioning in most of them. And I really like how it engages the reader to even question themselves and maybe compare situations of their own lives with just a simple writing. And I think you communicate what you're going through very poetically and well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you definitely describe things with the right words, and I can tell that you take time to kind of put yourself in the reader's position, just, having that simple but yet really advanced kind of writing. And I like that about it.
That's fun.
So I know it's like what seems to be kind of a contradiction. Not that it's a mistake anyway, but just something that I don't understand completely is that you begin by saying that the butterfly is a source of contention in your mind, so it's like it fills, I guess, what produces what you call a troublesome mind, which you compare to like a storm in a clear sky. But then also you say it, like down here you say, I lay my head at night, sandy, held upon a thread, so one would assume that it has to do with what this inner turmoil that the butterfly is causing. And solemn thoughts do fill my head, but then you say, so I think about a little butterfly instead of those solemn thoughts, which initially you'd think have to do with the butterfly. But then you say you're thinking about the butterfly instead, so what is the distinction between the solemn thoughts and the butterfly? And why does it seem, at least, that you're saying that the butterfly, at least there, is almost like a source of relief, when before you were saying it was a source of contention?
Well, when I said you feels a troublesome mind, it was like a source of thoughts that were supposed to ease a troublesome mind. I mean, I guess I used the wording a little wrongly, so it may have sounded like I meant that it was something that was troublesome. I was trying to convey that the butterfly was something. The butterfly is not something specific. It's almost a mindset, way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. That's not how you portray it, though. The butterfly is a specific thought or person or thing in this poem, at least in the way you express it.
Yeah, I probably could have done better with the way I expressed it, because
I'm not saying you did a bad job. It's just I'm trying to understand, because obviously most of us, or at least we don't have the full picture of what the butterfly is and what it represents for you and things, which
yeah,
you don't have to
this
share,
poem
obviously.
wasn't really supposed to be like shared. Not that I did. Not that I.
Oh.
I don't. I like to share it. It's just like it's harder to understand for other people because it's pretty personal to me.
See, and where I think you see the confusion there, I see that the butterfly, I think that's the question. Who are you?
Right.
Because I think he is what I get from it, anyways, as the author, he is contending that the butterfly is both beautiful and causes discomfort.
Yeah.
And so the butterfly there's almost two versions of it that he's struggling with. The thing that brings him peace, right, towards the end, the pretty butterfly, the one that he thinks about instead of the solemn thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the sense that the butterfly is the one that flutters and
Mhm.
isn't contained and causes those thoughts. So when I read it, that's what I picked up.
That's
on.
exactly.
Almost initially was just as the author, his consternation of trying to figure this butterfly out that causes him both frustration and peace at the same time.
That's what I got out of it.
All right. Well, I guess no one else wants to add anything. We can move on to our poetry book. I have a few authors in mind. Does everybody have their books?
That's a
I haven't been able to find like for a while, but I can like scan it on the book and find it online. So,
Yeah, we can share too.
yeah.
Alright, the first I was thinking of was it's on 132 by Rudyard Kipling. I don't think we've read this one yet.
which one?
Page 132, you said?
Thought
Yeah.
we did read that.
Did we?
Away
Okay.
through the woods.
I've asked you to start by reading it for us. Actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and read his biography, which is on page 408. I'll read his, wait. I feel like we did. Now that I look at his biography, I feel like we might have read his poem. But I don't recognize the poem at all. That's strange.
Maybe we had another one of his.
Did you read If by him? It's probably his most famous.
Well, I mean, I definitely have. I don't know if I know it's not in this book. And I can't quite remember if we read it all together or not, but yeah, that's definitely a good one. Benji, do you want to read his biography there on page 408?
How do you pronounce his name?
Is it Rudyard? Rudyard?
Rudyard Kipling's career began to develop when he worked in India for Anglo-Indian newspapers. He was a talented reporter, reviewer, essayist, and short story writer. But his first major success came with poetry after his return to England. The publication of Barrack Room Ballads in 1892, which captured the experiences of soldiers across the British Empire, brought him considerable fame. His appeal was further strengthened by his popular writing for children. The Jungle Book was published in 1894. Kipling suffered devastating personal bereavements with the loss of one of his daughters when she was 6 years old, and the death of a son who was killed in action at the start of the First World War. He was often seen as a poet of empire, with conservative views, and his reputation suffered after the First World War. And with the advent of modernism, in spite of the impressive range of his work and his skillful craftsmanship.
Okay. Esther, you want to read that one?
The Way Through the Woods. They shut the road through the woods 70 years ago. Weather and rain have undone it again, and now you would never know. There was once a road through the woods before they planted the trees. It is underneath the coppice and heath, and the thin
I think it's
anemones. Only the keeper sees. That where the ringdove broods and the badgers roll at ease. There was once a road through the woods. Yet if you enter the woods of a summer evening light, when the night air cools on the trout-ringed pools, where the otter whistles his mate, they fear not men in the woods, because they see so few. You will hear the beat of a horse's feet, and the swish of a skirt in the dew, steadily cantering through the misty solitudes, as though they perfectly knew. The old lost road through the woods, but there is no road through the woods.
Alright, I'm going to read the analysis and we'll have someone else read it again. Let's see. In the first 12 lines, Kipling simply and delicately describes the abandoned road in the woods. What details does he present in order to help us picture the scene? What do you notice about the rhythm and the elaborate rhyme scheme, and the way these features support the meaning of the poem? Look at the internal rhyme used in the 3rd and 7th lines in each stanza. In the 2nd stanza, how does Kipling introduce an element of mystery and intrigue while still employing carefully observed descriptive detail? Note how yet at the start of the 2nd stanza signals the introduction of new observations and information, while the use of a 13th line creates a haunting conclusion to the poem. The drama and tension in the poem are heightened by the sudden auditory and visual impact of the beat of a horse's feet and the swish of a skirt. Roads and woods can be powerful metaphors in poetry and song. Do you think there's a metaphorical element in this poem, or should we simply enjoy the carefully constructed, mysterious tale of an old lost road? that analysis, they kind of just offer a bunch of questions. So what are y'all's thoughts about the poem itself? Based off of, for instance, what we know about Kipling.
We have no clue.
It's kind of mysterious.
That seems to be the point to me.
Mm.
The mystery of it.
Mm.
Because it's only the keeper sees.
It's interesting.
I think he's using the way through the woods as an analogy or metaphor or something.
What do you think
I'm
he
not
was
really
using
sure.
it for? Yeah.
I just, that's what I can get out of it.
Justin, you mind reading it for us?
Sure. The way through the woods. They shut the road through the woods 70 years ago. Weather and rain have undone it again, and now you would never know. There was once a road through the woods before they planted the trees. It is underneath the coppice and heath and the thin anemones. Only the keeper sees. That where the ringdove broods and the badgers roll at ease, there once was a road through the woods. Yet if you enter the woods of a summer evening late, when the night air cools on the trout-ringed pools where the otter whistles his mate, they fear not men in the woods because they see so few. You will hear the beat of a horse's feet and the swish of a skirt in the dew, steadily cantering through the misty solitudes, as though they perfectly knew the old lost road through the woods. But there is no road through the woods.
This is such a strange the horse's feet and the swish of a skirt, as mentioned earlier, almost gives this this presence of there being, like, for lack of a better word, like a ghost almost. Basically the leftover presence of someone or something that used to traverse on what was a road, even though there's, as the conclusion of the poem says, no road.
Maybe the road's not there anymore because of this person or ghost, I guess.
Yeah.
It's been forgotten.
Mm.
It could represent a former way of things that
Yeah.
has been lost, and the idea of the horse. I mean, it still knows it, so there are things that just intuitively know the way, but there is no clear road.
Yeah.
It's been lost to those who are there now.
It's very interesting. So I was thinking maybe we could also look at it's on 141. It's one of those more modern kind of aesthetic poems, it seems. Hopefully it doesn't negatively surprise anyone. Because I don't know this poet. It's called Sea Rose. Benji, do you want to read that for us?
Sure.
Actually, before we do, I guess I can read the biography real quick. So we can get that.
415.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see. This person seems really weird. Never mind. I just was glancing over it. And let's see. Good night, nurse.
Oh my gosh.
Let's go. I had another one. Let's go to Edward
Poem doesn't
Thomas.
seem
He's
to-
on 150.
Why? Why does he seem so weird?
What? Sorry, wait.
It's on 150.
One.
It's called Lights Out. Alright, I'll read the biography real quick. Edward Thomas, this is on 421 by the way, the biography. Edward Thomas is often thought of as a war writer, but by 1914 he was already the father of 3 children and had been supporting his family for some years through book reviewing and writing essays, especially about the English countryside, and biographies. His novel, The Happy-Go-Lucky Morgans, was published in 1913. He began to introduce poetry in 1914, partly encouraged by his friendship with the American poet Robert Frost, who was living near Thomas in England at the time. Frost urged Thomas to move with his family to New England, but Thomas enlisted in 1915. He was killed by a shell blast in France in 1917. He wrote many poems between 1915 and 1917, recording both his experiences of wartime and his response to the countryside, with a kind of meditative thoughtfulness seen in one of his most widely read and loved poems, Adlestrop. All right. Actually, Kayla, do you want to read this for us?
Sure. Lights out. I have come to the borders of sleep, the unfathomable deep, forest where all must lose their way. However, straight or widening, soon or late, they cannot choose. Many a road has a track that, since dawn's first crack, up to the forest brink, deceived the travelers, suddenly now blurs, and they sink. Here love ends, despair, admission ends, all pleasure, all trouble, all thought, although most sweet or bitter. Here ends in sleep that is sweeter than the task most noble. There is not any book or face of dearest look that I would not turn from now. To go into the unknown, I must enter and leave alone. I know not how the tall forest towers, its cloudy foliage lowers ahead, its shelf above shelf, it's silent. I hear and obey, that I may lose my way and myself.
Interesting. Elijah, you want to read it too?
I have come to the borders of sleep, the unfathomable deep, forest where all must lose their way, however straight or winding, soon or late, they cannot choose. Many a road and track that since dawn first tread, up to the forest brink, up to before the brink, deceived the travelers, suddenly now blurs, and in they sink. Here love ends, despair, ambition ends, all pleasure, all trouble, although most sweet or bitter, here ends in sleep that is sweeter than tasks most noble. There is not any book or face of dearest look that will not turn from now. To go into the unknown, I must enter and leave alone. I know not now. The tall forest towers. Its cloudy foliage lowers. Ahead, shelf above shelf. Its silence I hear and obey, that I may lose my way and myself.
Let's take a look at the analysis for this one, 421. I'll read it. This meditation on sleep as welcome rest and as the ultimate rest of death was written during the First World War when Thomas was serving in France. He did not survive the war. Thomas compares the moment just before falling into a deep sleep to reaching the border of a dense forest. Here we see, like I mentioned in the last poem, the way that forests are often used in poems for a metaphor. Notice the use of the image. Oh, Hannah wrote in a track too. Notice the use of the image of a road or track, which suggests a journey or a purposeful sense of direction. And yet, in this poem, the road does not lead to anywhere but oblivion. Consider the third verse, where Thomas seems to confront directly the prospect of death. What does the poem suggest will end with death? In the penultimate verse, Thomas appears to be choosing to turn from the known world of books and people to embrace the unknown. He expresses a powerful realization that he must do this alone, repeatedly using the active pronoun I. The poem ends with a paradox of hearing silence and Thomas's reference once again to the forest with all its traditional associations of enchantment, mystery, and danger. So what do you guys think about this poem? Like, what is in the context of Edward Thomas's life? What is he actually contemplating and thinking about, and what inspires him to write something like this?
I think it has to do a lot with his emotions and stuff like that.
Sure.
And the things that I think it's a lot of people use their poetry as a way to use their emotions, and like if anything sad they're going through or happy or uncomforting, they kind of express it but in a way that it's personal. So I don't know if this is a personal, like something that could have applied to his own life or something like
Yeah.
that. Kind of sounds like it would be something like that.
So as I think I mentioned in the analysis, it does seem like Thomas, while he is directly talking about sleep, he also may have some using that as a way of expressing his thoughts about death too, which obviously is all surrounding him as he's involved in the war. And in fact, it's almost somewhat prophetic for him too, because he dies in the war. So what do you guys think about that, and the way that the sort of, if sleep in this example can actually serve as a metaphor for death? Is there maybe a line in the poem that best expresses that sentiment?
I must enter and leave alone.
Okay. But that's something you do in sleep too, right? Obviously that is a connection there. But what do you think?
Here ends the state that is sweeter than Tassman's murder.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too that he's almost being drawn. It's not even just a choice he's making. It seems it's almost like he's involuntarily being drawn into this oblivion, which obviously you can say is comparable to sleep, because if you're tired, you can't help but starting to doze and finally fall asleep. But it makes it almost somewhat unsettling to think that he could be almost contemplating the inevitability of his death, almost as if he was, not that this was the case, but it seems almost as if he knew his time was coming really soon, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps that could be a wrong interpretation. Perhaps it was not merely about, or maybe it was something more to do than death. But do you guys have any more thoughts about it? Or I think we can maybe do one more. Again, the majority of the poets in this book are pretty unknown to me. But a little bit earlier in the book, on page 60, it's going to be kind of a whole different kind of theme and style here, but it's by Joanna Bailey, I think. It's called A Mother to Her Waking Infant. We'll see if there's anything decent about this one. And we'll close after this poem. I guess I'll read the biography, which is on 365, and then I'll have Naomi read the poem for us. Alright, here's the biography, again on 365. Joanna Bailey was a Scottish playwright, critic, and poet who lived most of her life in the Hampstead, where she was the center of a rich literary culture. Born into a family of physicians and the daughter of a university professor, Bailey was unusually well educated for a woman of her time. As a teenager, she learned geometry, philosophy, and Latin, and she had a lifelong interest in medicine. Bailey wrote 27 plays and was well known and widely admired during her lifetime. Her poetry was translated into other languages, and both Haydn and Beethoven set her songs to music. Wow, I remember. Written in an elegant, orderly style, her poetry dealt with heroic historical figures, Scottish songs, nature, and childhood. In addition to her literary work, Bailey was a supporter of other writers and a notable philanthropist who gave away half her earnings to charity. Passionately anti-slavery, she sponsored the first slave narrative published in England. Surprised I haven't heard of this person. Have you heard of him? Heard, Justin? Seems so pretty influential, but never heard of her. Okay, go ahead, Naomi.
Mother to the waking infant. Now in thy dazzling, half-opened eye, thy curled nose and lip awry, thy uphoist arms and nodding head, and little chin with crystal spread. Poor helpless thing, what do I see? That I should seen or be. From the poor tongue, no accents come, which can but rub thy toothless gum. Small understanding boasts thy face, thy shapeless limbs, nor step nor grace. A few short words thy feast may tell, and yet I love thee well. When sudden wakes the bitter shriek, and redder swells thy little cheek, when rattled keys thy woe
Beguile.
And through the wet eye gleams the smile, still for thy weakly self is spent, thy little silly plaint. But when thy friends are in distress, thou laugh and chuckle nevertheless, nor even with sympathy be smitten, though all are sad but thee and kin. Yet little fairlet that thou art, thou twitchest at the heart. Thy rosy cheek, so soft and warm, the pinky hand and dimpled arm, thy silken locks that scantly keep, with gold-tipped ends or circles deep. Around thy neck in armless grace, so soft and sleekly hold their place. My harder hearts with kindness fill, and gain a right goodwill. Each passing clown bestows his blessing, thy mouth is worn with old wives kissing. Even laughter looks the gloomy eye of surely since, and thou art by. And yet I think, who are they be? They love thee, not like me. Perhaps when time shall add a few short years to thee, thou love me too. And after that, through life's weary way, become my sure and cheering stay. Wilt care for me and be my hold when I am weak and old. Thou shalt listen to my lengthened tale and pity me when I am frail. But see the sleepy spinning fly upon the window takes thine eye. Go to thy little senseless play, thou dost not heed my lay.
I was coming to that football. I liked it. Who else thought of Camden when you were? Oh, that's funny. All right, I'll read it too, just because I haven't read one yet, and then
Find it.
have someone read the analysis. A mother to her waking infant. Now in thy dazzling half-opened eye, thy curled nose and lip awry, thy uphoist arms and nodding head and little chin with crystal spread. Poor helpless thing, what do I see, that I should sing of thee? From thy poor tongue no accents come, which can but rub thy toothless gum. Small understanding boasts thy face, thy shapeless limbs, nor step nor grace. A few short words thy feats may tell, and yet I love thee well. When sudden wakes the bitter shriek, and redder swells thy little cheek, when rattled keys thy woe beguile, and through the wet eyes gleams the smile, still for thy weakly self is spent, thy little silly plaint. But when thy friends are in distress, thou'lt laugh and chuckle nevertheless, nor e'en with sympathy be smitten, though all are sad but thee and kitten. Yet little varlet thou that thou art, thou twitchest at the heart. Thy rosy cheek so soft and warm, thy pink hand and dimpled arm, thy silken locks that scantly peep, with golden tip ends where circles deep. Around thy neck in harmless grace, so soft and sleekly hold their place, might harder hearts with kindness fill, and gain our right goodwill. Each passing clown bestows this blessing, thy mouth is worn with old wives' kissing. E'en lighter looks the gloomy eye of surly sense when thou art by. And yet I think where they be, they love thee not like me. Perhaps when time shall add a few short years to thee, thou'lt love me too. And after that, through life's weary way, become my sure and cheering stay. Wilt care for me and be my hold when I am weak and old. Thou'lt listen to my lengthened tale, and pity me when I am frail. But see the sweepy spinning fly upon the window takes thine eye. Go to thy little senseless play, thou dost not heed my lay. I think it's interesting that if you consider the form of her poetry, she always has obviously a theme for each paragraph there. And at the end, she always kind of encapsulates that theme and compares it to herself in some way. That's what the last line always ends. She always mentions some thoughts she has about that, but like the theme of that particular paragraph. Refers back to herself at the end, I mean to say.
What page is that about?
The what now?
What page is that?
It's on 365.
Oh wow.
Justin, you want to read this one for us too?
Sure. The poem. What expectations does the title of the poem create? Perhaps we might anticipate something rather sweet and sentimental. Romantic poets were especially interested in childhood, often seeing it as a special state of being, innocent, imaginative, close to God. To what extent will Bailey's infant fit this description? Bailey initially presents a superficially cool, almost detached assessment of her baby. Among other things, the infant is imperfect. Its lip is awry, and also weak, helpless, and graceless. Moreover, It is a limited companion, having small understanding, a poor tongue, and being senseless. It is also selfish, unbothered by the suffering of others. In summary, an infant is a little varlet. However, there are hints of the preciousness of the baby to its mother, with the reference to silk and gold, and the impact the little baby has on others seems overwhelmingly positive. In at least 2 verses, the mother speaks directly of her love for the baby and looks forward to a time when roles will be reversed and her child will be the one to care of her.
It is interesting. I like the idea of her almost the poem being kind of a something different from the convention of approaching the innocence of childhood as not being something that is perhaps physically perfect, as it may be conveyed often around and before her time, but it is still something that nonetheless produces, at least from her as a mother, strong feelings of affection, and really from anyone that comes across, in this case, her baby. But the turning away from this convention is presenting him as like this perfect little angel, I think is interesting, because I do like the fact that she kind of takes a more realistic approach to her baby and kind of describing his what you could say is his imperfections or his shortcomings. But yeah, I guess there's not anything too profound about the poem. It's just pretty descriptive. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Who did that?
That was me.
Acting like a baby.
Benji is the poem. Child, baby cheeks.
All right, well, I guess we will conclude there today. Can't say it was particularly eventful, but
Thanks.
it's a good poem, yeah.
Yeah.